Good morning, and thank you for joining today's web event, a demonstration of Oracle ERP Cloud. My name is Steve, and I'll be your host for today. Before we get started, I'd like to review how you can participate in today's web event. If I get to the right place in my presentation here. Got ahead of myself, I apologize. Okay, that's better. So to participate in today's web event, use your GoToWebinar attendee interface. You should see something that looks like my screen on your computer. To ask questions today, you simply type your question into the question pane and hit send. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll answer all of your questions during our Q&A session. I'm very happy to be joined today by Shekhar Ramanathan. Shekhar is a solutions engineer at Oracle, and he's going to be demonstrating the Oracle ERP Cloud product for us today. Just real quickly, for those of you that haven't seen this yet or aren't familiar with Terillium, I'll introduce us here in just a minute or less. Terillium is an ERP consulting firm, and we do specialize in implementing enterprise resource planning projects for our customers. While those ERP projects can sometimes carry risks if not performed properly, Terillium is very proud to have won many awards for our ERP implementations. We have a mantra here that we're only as good as our last reference, and we think our success stems from our ability to deliver value on our projects for our customers, and we're very happy to recognize all of our consultants who deliver that value. We do have over 170 full-time employees across the United States, and all of these consultants average over 16 years with consulting and Oracle applications. We developed this webinar, this ERP comparison web series, to help companies like you who are considering new ERP systems. That can be kind of a daunting journey, and we thought this series would be a good way to make that journey a little easier. Yesterday, after our opening session by Ultra Consulting, we then showed you the NetSuite product. That was a great session with a lot of participation and questions. I encourage you to ask as many questions as you like today. I think that makes for a better event for everyone. This morning, we're going to continue with Oracle's ERP Cloud. Later today, we're going to be demonstrating an on-premise offering, JD Edwards, at 2 o'clock, so we invite you to come back and join us for that. Then tomorrow, we'll continue the series by comparing the pros and cons of cloud versus on-premise ERP systems. And then finally, tomorrow afternoon, our president, Dave Woodworth, is going to share his experience with ERP project success factors. So today's focus is on Oracle's Cloud ERP, and Oracle, their goal is to simplify your journey and provide you with a complete, innovative, and proven cloud service. And that can help you now and into the future. Here on your screen, you'll see the completeness of cloud applications at Oracle that span human capital management, ERP, enterprise performance management, procurement, project management, risk management, enterprise planning, customer experience, and supply chain. So this is a very complete set of applications with modern practices built right in. From an innovative perspective, Oracle provides built-in innovation, and they deliver this innovation to you every 3 to 6 months, and you get to consume those new innovative features as you need them. And customization and rewrites of your customizations are no longer necessary because Oracle applications are upgrade safe. Now, staying with our theme, proven, part of reducing risk for your business is to pick a cloud partner that's sound and proven, that can help your business to go live fast in the cloud. And you can see here some examples of speed to the cloud, which I think might be a little bit surprising in terms of how quickly you're able to consume these cloud applications and implement them within your company. We had some good questions yesterday about security in the cloud. How do we keep our data secure if we can't see the hardware running in our own server closet? And Oracle provides a multi-layer secure approach to the cloud, and it's a big differentiator for Oracle. Some of the layers that Oracle works on, these built-in cloud security features, from the physical data center security to network, hardware, chip, and operating system, all the way to storage, disk and database, platform, and to the application layer. So, as well as providing global access controls so that onboarding and offboarding employees and contractors is consistent and compliant. Oracle invests in these multiple layers of cloud security as part of its overall design across 27 global data centers. So obviously with a name like Oracle, you're getting the best in cloud security that is available. So now I would like to turn the presentation over to Shaker, and Shaker is going to demonstrate, obviously not all of the applications I just talked about, but a portion of Oracle's ERP Cloud with a specific focus on supply chain planning. So Shaker, thank you very much for joining us today. I know we're all excited to learn more about Oracle ERP Cloud.
So good morning, everyone. Like Steve said, my name is Shaker Ramanathan. I'm a solution engineer with Oracle, focusing on value chain planning and manufacturing applications. I've been with Oracle a long time, working on our on-premise applications, EBS, JD Edwards, and now have been working on the cloud applications for several years. Prior to Oracle, I was in industry in automotive, medical device manufacturing, and so have been in positions that you folks are in today. So to start with my safe harbor statement, everything I'm going to be talking about today is released product, but in case I talk about something that's in the future, I just need to have this up here. So we've done that, the obligatory safe harbor. So from a program agenda perspective, we're going to focus on what is the business need for modern supply chain products, talk a little bit about the concepts behind our supply chain applications, and then show you the software and answer questions that you might have. So what are some of the reasons people are looking at new supply chain applications? One is that innovation and growth needs to be fast, because things are constantly evolving, things are changing very fast, so people need to innovate and deploy new products really quickly. They need to be customer-centric to be able to retain customers and increase profits, be able to be responsive in the supply chain, because the supply chains are getting more complex, they're getting more rapidly changing, so we need to be able to respond to those. And then the other thing is around people, right? The people are used to modern applications in all their other lives, so they're not wanting to deal with the older on-premise green screen type applications, so everybody's looking for more modern technology. Now, one of the key things that we've also heard is over 3/4 of the executives who are using ERP applications in their organizations are all saying that it is difficult to access data, the cycle times to make changes, etc., are too long. Collaboration across the enterprise and with your trading partners is not what it needs to be. So people are looking for applications that provide analytics easier, the collaboration capabilities, and to be able to, like we said earlier, to be able to get products out faster, react to customers faster, be nimble in the supply chain and things like that. So that's why people are looking for modern applications. So Oracle's supply chain applications, which is what I'm going to focus on today, are built on essentially 3 broad concepts, 3 guiding principles. One is a very broad set of applications. Steve talked about how the Oracle application suite is broad in the sense there's financials, human resources, customer relationship management, supply chain, etc. We're going to focus now in the next 45 minutes on the supply chain applications. So again, the supply chain applications are a very broad set of applications. They have embedded analytics, mobility built into it. It's all configurable based on rules and workflows. And then from an implementation perspective and upgrade perspective, like Steve talked about, it's all based on a cloud architecture with embedded best practices. So it's easier to upgrade, easier to update, and keep current. So from the breadth perspective, what you're seeing here is all the different applications or modules or functionality that are available in the supply chain applications, right? From supply chain planning all the way to product data management. I'm not going to necessarily read every one of these modules, but you can see how all the modules that are needed to manage a manufacturing distribution type operation is all built into the application, and it is all built on a common foundation of social collaboration, mobility, embedded analytics, and integrations, etc., built into it. Peeling back the layer a little bit, if you look at supply chain, these are all the different modules or the modules within the supply chain planning suite. So we're going to look at this thing called PlanningCentral today. And for those of you who are supply chain and manufacturing oriented, PlanningCentral, you can think of it as a basic MRP type functionality. And we'll talk a little bit more detail about exactly all the capabilities within PlanningCentral. But as you update the application and you need additional capabilities, we have additional functionality such as order promising. Order promising is the ability to look at the sales, for example, when you're taking sales orders, to be able to look across the supply chain, look across planned orders as well as planned production, and determine consistently and accurately when you can promise something to a customer. Demand management is more comprehensive forecasting capabilities built into the application. PlanningCentral has forecasting built into it. Demand management provides advanced functionality with more advanced models, the capabilities to do calculations, add your own series, own hierarchies, etc. So more complex, more comprehensive forecasting capabilities that Oracle used to have in our on-premise applications such as Demantra. Sales and operations planning is a module that's built upon the forecasting engine to provide collaboration across the enterprise with dashboards and a process control capability to manage the sales and operations planning process, so you can understand where you are in the process, who's responsible for activities in the process, the different dashboards such as executive review, financial review, operations review, all that built into it. And then supply planning is the planning across the enterprise from a supply perspective to determine what you need to buy, what you need to make, when you need to make it, when you need to buy it, etc. And then from a collaboration perspective, the capabilities to exchange information with your trading partners in the context of the application. So today we're going to focus on PlanningCentral. Before I go into that, one other point I wanted to make is all these applications are architected and the plumbing is provided for you to work with any ERP system. So the ERP system can be Oracle's Cloud ERP, it can be our on-premise applications, it can be NetSuite, it can be some other application that's not even an Oracle application. The architecture is such that we provide web services, we provide APIs and file-based uploads to extract demand data, for example, and inventory data, as well as lead times or master data from these ERP applications, bring it into our planning engine so we can run our plans, and when we publish the plans, we can push the data back into those systems for execution purposes. So we pre-deliver integration with our cloud applications, and we will have we will also at some point pre-deliver the integration with our on-premise applications. Now, if you're running some kind of legacy application and you're looking for best-in-class planning products, you can still deploy our planning products and the integration would have to be built using the infrastructure that I just discussed. So peeling back the onion again, just at PlanningCentral, PlanningCentral essentially does three things. It helps you plan, monitor, and respond to what's going on from a planning perspective within your organization. So PlanningCentral does three things. It plans, or it allows you to forecast customer demand. So it generates a statistical forecast, estimate demand for new items. It does safety stock calculations based on service levels. And then you can run an unconstrained MRP type supply plan to plan your supply. And as it's going through all this, it's evaluating your material and capacity requirements, providing exceptions, allowing you to compare plans, etc. within the application. So it does three things from a planning perspective: plans demand, plans supply, and plans safety stock, all built into one integrated application. So just talking a little bit about the forecasting capabilities. For those of you who are familiar with forecasting engines and forecasting technology, most of the forecasting engines out there use what's called pick best or best pick methodology, which is they're looking at the demand history, evaluating multiple models against that demand history, and picking a model that fits that demand history best in terms of providing an accurate forecast or reducing forecast error. Our system does it a little bit different. Since it's based on proven demonstrative technology, it uses a blend of models to come up with a more accurate forecast. So the idea is there is not one model that fits any historical demand pattern best, but there are different models that fit different slices of history. So we use different models over time to come up with a blended forecast that has been, in practice, been proven to be more accurate than picking a single model. There's also capabilities in the system to do things such as new product introductions. So when you're creating forecasts for new products, to look at historical demand for similar products, which you can identify, and then the system looks at that history to determine what the new product forecast is. It's a collaborative process, so the system comes up with a forecast, but you can also override it. You can bring in additional forecasts into the system from, for example, your sales or your marketing departments, evaluate accuracy against all these different kinds of forecasts, but you can blend these forecasts in to drive your supply planning. A couple other points I want to point out: the forecasting can be done in units, the forecasting can be done in dollars. The system uses monetary conversions to get it all down to units from a planning perspective. You can forecast from an aggregate level, at a product family level. You can forecast at a detailed SKU level. System will do aggregation, disaggregation for you. So the point here is, though the forecasting process is built into this integrated planning engine, it has a lot of the capabilities that you find only in best-in-class forecasting engines. Safety stock, there's different ways you can calculate safety stock based on days of cover, based on some kind of days of supply, or you can do that based on service levels. So based on service levels, to meet a defined service level such as 95 or 98%, what kind of safety stock do you need to have in the supply chain to make sure your fill rates are high? So the system allows you to calculate safety stocks that way and add those safety stocks to your forecast demand when you do your supply planning. From a supply planning perspective, it plans the entire supply chain. What I mean by that is, if you have a vertically integrated supply chain or manufacturing scenario where you have sub-assembly plants and final assembly plants, and if you want, you can plan that entire supply chain in one holistic plan. The system then also, so the system also has big capabilities to do what's called contract manufacturing planning. In other words, if you're using an outside manufacturer to make your product, and you actually supply some raw material or components to them, the system will plan both levels, create POs for both levels, and manage that whole contract manufacturing process for you. So just to level set from a planning perspective, like any other planning system, so the system takes demand into consideration, demand being forecast and or sales orders. It takes master data such as lead times, such as order modifiers, such as minimum order quantities or minimum day supply. It brings in all your inventory, open orders, and it's constantly trying to manage supply and demand. And then it creates multiple output signals. It gives you exceptions for rescheduling purposes, exceptions for capacity issues, etc. Creates work orders or planned orders that can be converted to work orders, planned orders that can be converted to POs, planned orders that can be converted to internal material transfers between organizations or between plants. And it's constantly keeping this in balance and giving you those exception messages as well. So let's take a look at the software. So I want to just start with a quick look and feel. So when you log into the application, this is what we call the springboard or the landing page. So within the springboard and the landing page, what you're seeing, all these icons here are all the functions that this particular user has access to. I'm logged on here as a super user, so I have access to a whole bunch of different functionality within the application. So based on who you are, this would be configured to be just this functionality that you need to access. So a couple things I want to point out. The system has the capability to it keeps track of favorites being the applications or the functionality that you use on a most common basis, so you can set those up for yourself. You also have what's called recent items, so the system keeps track of everything you've been to recently, right down to an item level or right down to a part, to an order level. So if you've been looking at a specific item, if you've been looking at a specific order, it knows where you've been, so you can actually go back to it very easily. For those of you who are familiar with some of other applications such as J.D. Edwards, and you're familiar with the concept of watch lists, the system has the capability to identify different watch lists. So watch lists are things that are looking at what's going on in the application. So what orders have changed in the last 7 days, or what POs need your attention, what inventory is aging, those kinds of things. So you can basically set these queries up, and these queries are running in the background, collecting data that you're wanting to monitor, and then you can click directly from here into each of those. So instead of running queries every time you need to get to some data, you can predefine what the data you want to access is and get to it very, very quickly. The system has notifications. Workflow is prevalent throughout the application. So as you're notified about things that you need to be doing, the system delivers those workflow messages to you. Before we move off the navigation, one other thing I want to point out is, again, we talked about access to data, providing data. So embedded analytics are built into the application. So you can set up these kinds of infolets. We pre-deliver some, but you can add your own infolets as well. So you can define what are key performance indicators that are relevant to you and configure your dashboards to view those. So for example, here from a manufacturing supply chain perspective, we're looking at things like what's your WIP balances, inventory valuations, what kind of issues you might be having on the shop floor, what's past due from a production perspective. And from here, you can drill down to any of the details and look right down into the details in the system. So this is an example of how analytics are embedded and delivered throughout the application. So now let's take a look at PlanningCentral in a little bit more detail. So planning, again, from a planning perspective, this is the output of the planning system, right? So what you're seeing here is, again, info tiles at the top that tell you from a plan summary perspective or a plan health perspective what's going on in your business. If you were executing to this plan, what the margins would be, what the revenue would be, forecast comparison, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. You see forecast accuracy, what your turns would be, what demand is at risk, what are some exceptions that you're having. So again, things that, again, as a planner, that you are interested in accessing, you can set those up based on your individual preferences, individual needs to get to specific KPIs that are important to you. Again, the whole idea is you need to be able to get to the data that you want very, very quickly. So just to walk through some of these things again, just to show you the visual nature of the system and the ability to look at things. So if you go look at the revenue and margin tile, what you're going to see is as you go across these infolets, the data at the bottom of the screen gets refreshed. So what you're seeing here is what's your revenue and margin, and now you're seeing revenue and margin by product family, if you will, across time. And from here, you can drill down to the details. And I'll show you some of the drill downs as we walk through this application. So in this scenario, let's say you have a situation where your forecast, you have multiple forecasts, like I said, in the system from a supply chain perspective. You might have a sales forecast, which is a forecast that your sales marketing group provided, saying what they think they can sell. There could be a shipments forecast, which is what the system generated, saying this is what you need to be able to ship based on your historical demand. And if those are out of whack, for example, you can understand why they're out of whack and what you need to do to get them in sync. So again, talk about the social capabilities within the system. So if I click on this social button, what you see here is messages that this particular person is getting. So in this scenario, I'm logged on as a planner, and I see a message from the supply chain director saying, hey, you need to review the forecast. I just got a call from the CEO or whatever. So the idea here with social, which is embedded throughout the application, social collaboration, is the idea that in a typical environment like today, a lot of you are probably either picking up the phone, sending a text message, sending an email when you need to get additional information about something from someone else within your organization or someone even outside of the organization. So the idea here with social collaboration that's built into our application is that you do not have to leave the application to facilitate that kind of communication. So you can send social messages or social collaboration messages in the context of an object that you're involved in. So if it's relating to a plan, or if it's relating to a PO, or relating to a work order, you can send those messages in that context to whoever you need to send it to and get replies back. And the idea here is all this information then is stored in the database so you understand why certain decisions were made, who made them, etc. You also have the capability to set up distribution lists and just send messages outside of the context of a certain object, but those are also, again, maintained within the database. So the idea here is, again, from a collaboration perspective, to make sure everyone in the organization is aware of what's going on within the system. So let's close that out for a second. So if we go to the forecast comparison tile here, what you're seeing here is, again, forecast comparison. So here you've got the legend that basically says what's the sales forecast, what's the final shipment forecast, what was the shipment a year ago. So again, these graphs and these views are all configurable by you. You can define, you can create your own graphs. If the graphs we provided are not sufficient, you can identify which of those graphs you want to link to as you move across these info tiles on top. So you understand now, again, if you're looking at, hey, here's my shipment forecast, it's different from my sales forecast, you can come down here and see now where the differences are most prevalent, right? Because you can see from the colors where is the forecast difference the greatest. So if you want to drill down and understand that in more detail, you can just basically right-click here, drill down to specific. You can set out, this is basically guided navigation to let you drill down to specific areas within the application. So now if you wanted to understand why there is a difference in the forecast and you want to make some adjustments, you can directly drill down into a worksheet that shows you what these different measures are. So now you see, here's my different worksheet. Now I'm just going to make a couple quick changes. So what you see here is now I'm looking at specific product families, and by product family, by SKU, I'm looking at specific series, data that's important from a planning perspective. What was my shipments history? What are my sales orders? What is my shipment forecast, which is what the system generates. You can make adjustments to it because there's always situations where as a planner or as a forecasting person, you know more about what's going on than the system does. Then you come up with a final shipments forecast. You can also understand price, etc. So if I scroll over to the right a little bit, so you see here now where I have the shipments history, the sales forecast, a shipments forecast, and you also see some information here where it's highlighted, which basically tells you where there's this. You can set up highlights to highlight exception conditions. So what we're saying here is there's a significant difference between the sales forecast and the shipment forecast, and we want to draw your attention to it. Now, a lot of cases when you're doing forecasting, you might want to adjust that forecast based on something you know. So it's very easy to do that. So you identify the cells you want to adjust, go edit them, and then you can make changes to that forecast. You can make it, set it to a specific value, increase it by a certain number, increase it by a certain percent, whatever you need to do. So again, very, very easy to understand what's going on and also to make changes to that forecast here. So once you make forecast changes, you can also go out and create what's called notes. So the idea here is, let's close that out for a second. So what you're seeing here is the ability to say, hey, why did we make a change? Why did we adjust what the system told us to adjust? System told us to do, and who made it? All those kinds of things. So the idea here is from a forecast, you are keeping track of all these changes within the application. So the point, again, is those of you who've been in forecasting and planning understand that, when you go into a forecasting meeting, everybody walks in with their data, everybody is spending a bunch of time trying to figure out, reconcile all that. Now you have one place where you have all the data, you can make all these notes and why decisions were made to change things, and that's visible to everyone. Again, the whole idea is from a collaboration perspective. Everybody within the organization is working off the same set of data. Everybody understands why all these decisions were made. So a couple other things I want to quickly point out here. So if you want to, just to show you the power behind the application. So there's a whole bunch of what we call series of data that were available for us to select from, and we selected specific things that we wanted to see on that worksheet. So again, configurability. It's all you as a user can go into the application and pick the data you want to see that makes most sense to you as you're working through your supply chain planning process. So it's, and again, these 4 measures, as we call them, are series of data, or you can select those. You also have the capability to do calculations. You have the capability to create your own measures, etc. One other thing I mentioned earlier was that you can forecast at different levels if you will within the supply chain. Within the product, within the hierarchies. So we provide multiple hierarchies, so you can look at the forecast across different hierarchies. You can look at it across the product hierarchy, a customer hierarchy, an organization being where you ship from type hierarchy. So there's different hierarchies that you can forecast along, and the system will keep track of that same data across different hierarchies for you. So as you make those changes, since it's a multi-dimensional database, it keeps track of the data at the lowest possible level, so you understand you can look at the same data across different hierarchies. Now, if you go look at the product hierarchy just as an example, you see here what you're seeing is there's categories, there's items. So again, you can forecast at any level in this hierarchy. System will disaggregate the forecast down to the SKU level, or if you forecast at the SKU level, it's going to aggregate upwards. So depending on who you are and where you are in the organization, you might be looking at data at different levels within the same hierarchy. So again, very, very flexible, very, very powerful configuration capabilities, powerful forecasting capabilities built into the application. So a couple other things I want to point out before we leave planning from a demonstration perspective. So one of the other things that the system has is the capability to identify. So again, those of you who are in planning, those who work with planning type applications, you're always looking at exceptions. How do you react to exceptions? How do you keep the plan in sync? So one of the things that we have done with the application is identified, provided the ability to identify key exceptions that might be relevant to you, and then drill down into the details and also make recommendations to you about how to solve those exceptions or how to resolve those exceptions. So an example of that is something called demand at risk. So demand at risk is basically telling you what demand, whether it's sales orders or forecast, is at risk of being missed because there is a problem in your supply chain. So if you drill down into that, what you're seeing here is here's a demand at risk, and again, we show you where that demand at risk is. Again, we show it to you in a different way just to, again, show you the power of the graphics and the power of the visualization within the system. So now you identify what are the different products that might have, which have issues. And the size of these tiles here tells you the size of the demand that's at risk. And the color also identifies the value. So in the sense, for example, in the slimline tablets, AS6647431 has the highest value of demand that's at risk, and that I draw your attention very quickly to where you need to be focused on. So if we click on that, and if we want to drill down to some of the details, we can understand very quickly what demands are at risk and what we need to do to resolve those exceptions. So what the system shows you here is, here's all the demands that are at risk. There is 12 demands that are at risk. What's the value of all those demands in terms of dollars? And if you take specific actions, how many of those are going to be resolved very easily? Now you can drill down further down here and see here's all the demands that are at risk, and it's my demo system, so I just have a bunch of forecasts. And here's all the recommendations that the system is making, saying that if you do certain things, if you expedite these 4 buy orders, the system is, those demands can be met on time. So now the person who's looking at this in a traditional planning environment, they would be looking at, okay, I've got these, there's demands at risk. Now I got to drill down into each one of those separately, then figure out what I need to do, what I need to expedite, etc. Here we've linked all these together. We understand, because of the pegging within the system, that there are certain demands or certain sales orders or forecasts that are going to be missed. Now, instead of having to throw through the system and figure out which component is going to have to be expedited, because of the pegging, because of the capabilities built into the system, we direct you or point you directly to what you need to do so that you can resolve those exceptions. And right from here, you can highlight the ones you want and do accept it, so that the system, you're accepting the system's recommendations, and you can go ahead, go on your way. Now, within the application, there's also the capabilities to go through and do things such as accept those recommendations, rerun the plan directly from here, or in cases where you have things such as an additional demand that came into the system and you have to figure out, hey, can we take this demand? Can we take this order? You can add those demands directly into the system, run the plan. So you don't have to go and run the MRP type plan the traditional way when the system's down or at a certain point in time. You can done all these in an online fashion directly here. So there's different ways that you can now visualize what's going on, understand what's going on from a system perspective, and resolve those exceptions and react quickly to what's going on. So the last thing I want to focus on here, to go back to my plan summary, and let's go back to that forecast comparison. So instead of drilling down into that where we were before, we can also drill down, if you want to understand what's going on, into what's called the material plan. Again, the material plan is a traditional MRP report for people who are planners and buyers who've dealt with this before. So basically what we're showing you here is, again, this is configurable. So you're seeing what's the forecast, sales orders, what demands are there, total demand on hand, what's my projected available balance, what's my scheduled receipts, a traditional MRP report right online from here, along with all the planned orders that were created, etc. Now you can look at this. Again, this is a configurable view, so you can decide you did not want certain series or fields on it, etc. So you can configure this report any way you want. Now, if you want to understand what those planned orders are and take action, you just drill down to the supply and demand area. And what you're seeing here now is a place from where you can actually then, let's go to the release view. So from here, this is the system recommendations in terms of planned orders, when it needs to be released, etc. So now from here, you can firm orders, you can change the date, you can change the quantity, and you can release it from here. You can release multiple orders together at the same time, and when you release it, the orders become either work orders, can become releases against a blanket, a purchase order, etc., directly from here. And within the application, one of the things I mentioned before, and I just want to point out, is you also have the capability to do pegging. So before you release an order to manufacturing, or before you release an order to purchasing, you want to understand what is the source of the demand, because you might make a decision based on whether the demand is to satisfy a forecast or whether it is satisfy a sales order. You might make different decisions. Again, very easy to understand all these relationships all from one application here. So that is kind of what I wanted to show you from the application perspective. The key things to remember, again, I've gone through a bunch of different stuff very fast. The key things to remember are we provide embedded analytics and key performance indicators for you to understand what's going on in the business. You can drill down from those key performance indicators to places where you can directly take action to resolve exceptions, to resolve situations within the plan. These drill downs are all drill downs, as well as the key performance indicators, are configurable by you. The worksheets and the graphs that we provide are all configurable as well. So very, very powerful, configurable application, along built-in social collaboration that helps you, improves productivity, simplifies the whole planning process. So that's kind of what I want to show you from an application perspective. So a couple things here before we close and leave some time for questions. So PlanningCentral, right, is a planning system. It's a traditional MRP type planning engine. It also includes safety stock planning and forecasting. So you don't have to have a separate forecasting engine. Best-in-class forecasting built into our planning engine. the value that it provides, right? Like I showed you, improved productivity. So from one place, I can look at my forecast, I can look at my safety stock requirements, I can look at my supply. It's all configurable to make it suit the way I want to work. It increases efficiency because you can look, we direct you to relevant exceptions and what you need to do to resolve those exceptions and provide the facilities for you to resolve those very quickly instead of having to hunt down to specific details as you might need to in some other systems. And then the whole process is very simple. Then from an implementation perspective, very, very easy to implement quickly because of the architecture, because of the cloud-based architecture, because of the plumbing that's provided. And also it's upgrade proof because there's two releases a year with the, and you can update it at when you need to. So that's kind of what I wanted to leave you with, and wanted to open up the session for any questions you might have.
Yeah, Shaker, thank you very much. That was an excellent demonstration. I want to encourage anyone who has any questions to go ahead and type those in to your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll be happy to stick around and answer questions. But Shaker, obviously visually, when we talk about innovation, I think that's what we're talking about. What you showed was extremely impressive visually, very modern with the embedded BI and KPIs that you talked about. But then also, I think from an innovation perspective, you got a sense for the fact that this goes much beyond what we traditionally think of as MRP, right? These are some advanced forecasting capabilities that are built right into ERP Cloud. And so I think that was a nice example to show us truly the power of all the innovation that Oracle's putting in to this product. So thank you, Shaker, very much. Great demonstration. And again, if anyone has any questions, please type those in, and Shaker and I will be happy to answer any of those. I've got one here for you, Shaker. The question is this planning based on constrained or unconstrained?
So that's a great question. So the engine at this point, we talked earlier about talking about futures, etc. So from a planning perspective today, the supply planning is an unconstrained planning process. So it assumes that capacity as well as material is not constrained. But as the product evolves, it will have constrained planning capabilities.
Makes sense. Thank you. Another person here asks if this is able to be used with any ERP system. So if we wanted to use this for our planning, but then use a different ERP system, is that possible?
Great. Another great question. Yes, as one of the slides that we had earlier, the system is architected with the capabilities to bring in data that's needed to support planning, right? The data such as lead times and data such as order policy codes, item data, inventory data, open order data, etc. The system is architected such that it can pull in that data from any ERP system, go through the planning processes that we just looked at, and then when the orders are released out of the planning engine, push the released data back into the appropriate ERP system so that you can then create POs, create work orders, execute against those. So the system is what I would consider ERP agnostic.
Okay, excellent. Well, it looks like that's all of the questions we have, so I'd like to thank everyone for their time this morning. Hopefully that was a valuable look at Oracle ERP Cloud, and thank you to Shaker from Oracle for presenting such an excellent demo. I'll remind everyone that we will continue the series with our third ERP system we're looking at, JD Edwards, today at 2 p.m. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.